We didn't get married just to become roommates, did we? And we didn't say I do so we could eventually settle into a life of quiet, detachment, daily logistics, and stale affection. But for far too many of us men, that's exactly where we find ourselves, isn't it? The sparks are gone, the connection's dulled, and intimacy feels more like a memory reality. And maybe your wife doesn't look at you the way that she used to. Maybe you've stopped reaching for her altogether. Or maybe you're just stuck and going through the motions, wondering if passion can actually come back, or if this is just what marriage is supposed to look like after 10, 15, or 20 years. But here's the truth, brother. Passion doesn't die. It drifts. And in this episode, we're going to talk about what we can do to bring it back, not through tricks, not through manipulation, but through leadership, vulnerability, and pursuit. Because when a man learns how to reignite passion in his marriage, he doesn't just reconnect with his wife, he reconnects with himself. Now, before we dive deeper into this conversation, I want to ask you to do one bold move. And if this topic hits home for you, if you're tired of this slow drift and want more for your marriage, then just take 2 seconds right now. Hit that like button and subscribe to the podcast. Because when men open up, even just a little bit, it gives us permission to do the same. And that's how the ripple effect starts, isn't it? And so it's about how we can become better husbands and fathers and build stronger families and deeper connections. So don't just listen to today's episode, engage, and let's raise the standard together. And with that, let's get on with today's episode.
The average man today is sleepwalking through life. Many never reaching their true potential, let alone ever crossing the finish line to living a purposeful life. Yet, the hunger still exists, albeit buried amidst his cluttered mind, misguided beliefs, and values that no longer serve him. It's time to align yourself for greatness. It's time to become a revolutionary man. Stay strong, my brother.
So let's keep the momentum going here and let's take a really fresh, emotionally resonant part. Well, welcome back. I have a few questions for you to help really set the tone for the conversation that we're about to have today. When did you stop intentionally pursuing your wife? And how has that decision, conscious or not, impacted the emotional and physical intimacy in your marriage? And so if your marriage continues exactly as it is right now, what will it look like in 5 years from now? And is that the future that you're going to be proud of? And the last question I have for you is, what would it take for your wife to look at you with desire once again? Not obligation, not familiarity, but genuine fire. And are you willing to become this man? You know, these questions are here to really drive and reframe what passion looks like in our lives and to help us lead and not wait for things to happen. And so we're going to call out most of the stuff that we are afraid to admit to today. And we didn't ask these questions not to come with any easy answers, but here's the truth, that passion that you missed just didn't disappear. It's faded because we've stopped feeding it. And now's the time for us to do something about that. So this isn't going to be about big grand gestures or surface level fixes. You can get that in lots of areas. But today, it's going to be about reclaiming your role as a leader in your marriage. And it's not going to lead through force. We're going to lead through presence. We're going to lead through purpose and vulnerability. And if you're ready to reignite that fire, then I can't wait to continue this conversation with you. And so let's get into this conversation about how passion just doesn't die and how it drifts. And so some of the work we do here with the Revolutionary Man and our Band of Brothers group program is we do use the foundation of Dr. Robert Glover's book. And he says in his No More Mr. Nice Guy, nice guys are men who believe that they are good and they will still be loved, get their needs met, and have a smooth life. But really, when we trade emotional authenticity for approval, over time, what ends up by happening is we have this self-suppression that's going on, and it creates disconnection, creates resentment, and emotional passivity, especially when it comes to our most important relationship that we can have, which is with our spouse. And so when we think that if we just don't rock the boat, then we maintain peace, the idea of happy life, happy wife, When we do that, it ultimately means what we're doing is that we're sinking our own desires. And so when that happens, then our relationship truly slowly starts to drift from passion and becomes more rooted in emotional disengagement because we're masking it by being polite. But what we often miss, and this is some information that David Deida talks about, is I didn't really understand what this was all about until I really started to dive into his work. And because he's going to argue that a woman craves a man who can pierce her heart with presence, not predictability. And so when a man becomes domesticated and avoids depth, then she feels the loss in her body as well. So passion wanes not because of age or time. It fades when his consciousness no longer leads her to that moment. And so what's an example that we can look at? And what I really think about talking about this is framing masculinity around strength and courage and mastery and honor. And so in marriage, when we stop pursuing our personal edge and our growth, then we lose the very masculine energy that our wife is biologically drawn to. So the killer zone for our marriage is when we become safe, but then we're also pretty forgettable, aren't we? And so reclaiming passion means reclaiming that fire that doesn't drift, but it burns or it fades. And so it's about, what are you passionate about in life? And are you living and pursuing it? If we start doing that, then you'll start to see the passion rise in her as well. The next point I want to talk about in today's episode is the myth that passion is supposed to be spontaneous. And while there's spontaneity in every relationship, it's truly a myth to think that's how passion is. And so again, I'll reach into David Deida's work here, and he says, if you want real passion, you must be willing to risk everything for love. You must be willing to surrender your comfort, to step into the fire of its intensity. The myth of spontaneity is believing that relationship thrives in the sameness, when in actual fact, both masculine and feminine energies thrive in polarity, not sameness. And so think of it this way. Over time, comfort collapses polarity, doesn't it? And when we stop leading, she stops following. Sexual chemistry turns into friendly coexistence. It's the dreaded friend zone. And so passion is not accidental. It's a byproduct of our energetic tension. And so what are we missing here? What is it that's happening for us in our lives? For many of us, we avoid tension because we don't want to upset our partner. So we stop teasing, leading, initiating, and so we become passive. But the absence of healthy tension makes the relationship feel flat. And so to reignite attraction, we must become a source of intentional challenge, not passive comfort. And so the cure, according to David Donovan's work, is men need to live at the edge of risk and discomfort. And because a man who plays it safe in every area of life is going to become invisible at home, as well as in his own life. And when you live fully, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, we're going to bring that energy into the bedroom. And that's where true passion lives. So the third point I'd like to bring up in today's episode is why leading our marriage like a CEO is a huge mistake. Again, lean on David Deida's quote here, a man must love his woman, but his place is highest purpose above her. So we must love our women, but place our highest purpose above her. And so when we lose sexual polarity is when we put our relationship above our purpose. And how many of us, me included here, have done that? When we put our wife as the mission of our lives, then we unconsciously expect her to validate who we are as men, our masculinity and our identity. But a woman isn't meant to do that. She's not meant to be our source of our direction. She's meant to be inspired by our direction. And so in this instance, if what we're really missing when this happens is that we tend to overfunction in our relationships. So we do that by doing more, fixing more, managing more. This is really based in Glover's work. And it's what we do when we do this, we hope that we're going to get appreciated for this work, but it's a dynamic that kills attraction. She doesn't want a manager, and she sure doesn't want a man who can both lead himself and invite her into shared vision without control. So let me say that again. What she really wants is a man who can both lead himself and invite her into the shared vision without control. So here's an example. Our masculinity is forged in mission and in tribe. And when we abandon the challenge of comfort, we become domesticated. On the other hand, a man who maintains his edge, his ambition, his purpose brings heat into every room, including his marriage. And she doesn't want your seer checklist. She wants our fire, gentlemen. The fourth point about this entire conversation is how vulnerability truly fuels passion. And so our edge is our truth, and our vulnerability is going to be our depth. And so the point here is something that I've struggled with myself, and maybe you're going to understand this as well. Working with Dieda's work, he teaches that a woman yearns for a man who can open her emotionally, spiritually, and sexually. And that truly starts with him being open to himself. And in that previous episode, I remember talking about surrendering our ego to something greater than who we are. And so in terms of generating passion, being vulnerable, when embodied with grounded strength, becomes an invitation for intimacy. And so it says that I trust myself enough to be seen. And that is truly magnetic, gentlemen. And so what are we missing here when we think about vulnerability? What's going on here is that we typically think of as men that if we hide our emotion because we've been taught that vulnerability is going to equal weakness, haven't we? But emotional honesty, and here's the key, without victimhood, truly builds trust. And so when a man owns his insecurities without collapsing into them, he becomes deeply attractive and emotionally available. And so in other words, we value stoicism, but we also honor tribal loyalty. A man's bond with his people is going to be this way that we can become vulnerable in this context isn't really about being weak. It's about having strategic openness. And so when we can share authentically, then we can forge trust. We can forge emotional connection, both essential for igniting not just passion, but also purpose in our lives. And so when we really look at integrating these teachings from folks like Dr. Glover and Dieta and Donovan, we're just going to look at how we can reframe not just this discussion about passion, but it's also a framework for us to be able to really align ourselves with our masculine essence. And so I'd like to tell you a story about Ryan. Ryan's a 43-year-old entrepreneur. He's a father of two, and he's been married for 16 years. And from the outside, things looked pretty solid for Ryan. Business is growing, kids are healthy, and had a clean house, and everything was working out really fine, really well. But behind the bedroom door, everything was cold. Intimacy was rare, passion had gone, and every attempt to connect felt like going through the motions. And so he told himself that this is just what happens. It's a long-term marriage, and deep down, he missed her, not just the sex, but her eyes lighting up, her playfulness, her desire, and more than that, he missed the man he used to be. And so it came to one evening when everything got cracked wide open, and he made a sarcastic comment over dinner, and she replied, "I don't even know who you are anymore." Whew. You know, the arrow shot through the heart there, gentlemen. It wasn't said in anger. It was worse. It was said in indifference. And that night is when Ryan sat in his truck outside of his home for about an hour, staring at the steering wheel. Something he knew had died, and he knew he'd let that happen. This was truly his mirror moment. He wasn't showing up as a lover. He was managing the marriage, just like he did a business. And he had become nice, so he was predictable and efficient, emotionally neutered. And Dr. Clover would have called him, he was the nice guy, avoiding conflict, pleasing others, and secretly building resentment. He wasn't being rejected, he was being ignored. And that's the worst part of what was hitting him. And so Ryan had to make a decision, didn't he? He couldn't wait anymore for her to change. He would lead that change. And so he visited the man that he first met. He was driven. That man was confident. He was grounded in his purpose. And he reread The Way of the Superior Man and underlined every line about masculine presence and polarity. He joined a men's group. He hired a coach. He started working out again, and not for looks, but to reclaim his strength. He unplugged from the numbness and started to lead with clarity and not with control. And so he stopped managing his wife and he started pursuing her, not with pressure, but with presence, not for sex, but for connection. He planned a weekend away. He flirted again. He asked her what made her feel desired. And then he actually listened. Go figure. But this change just didn't happen overnight and everything was just instantly better. But it was real. It was real because after weeks of being consistent, and that's the key, gentlemen, weeks of being consistent, things started to shift. And it was one night when she actually reached for his hand first. And then another night, she leaned into him onto the couch and whispered, "The passion isn't a return because he demanded it. It returned because he became the man who evokes it. He wasn't just a nice guy anymore. He was strong, emotionally available, spiritually grounded, and he reclaimed his polarity. He rebalanced power, and most importantly, he stopped asking what happened to us and started asking, who do I need to become to reignite what we had? And then he answered it with action. And so reigniting passion isn't about tips and tricks. It's going to be about taking ownership, isn't it? And so when we stop seeking validation, we stop blaming and start leading from emotional strength and spiritual depth, then our marriages will transform. Not because she wants change, but because we want it. And I like this quote, when a man loves a woman, she becomes his greatest reflection. So here are a few practical tips for reigniting passion in your marriage. And the first tip I want to give you is lead with emotional presence, not problem solving. And so for many of us, especially if we're high performers, we fall into the trap of solving our wives' concerns rather than feeling them. But when we lead with presence, not logic, then we can show up as grounded, masculine energy that she can relax into. But the mistake most of us are going to make is that we're going to interrupt her with solutions instead of sitting in the moment. That's what kills connection. It says your emotions are a problem to fix, not here, I'm for you. And so tonight, when your wife opens up to you, even about something small, just pause. Make eye contact with her and say, tell me more. That phrase alone is going to disarm her defenses and invites her into emotional closeness. So tip number 2, you want to reignite polarity by reclaiming your edge. So if you've become too passive, too equalized, and too predictable, you've likely collapsed polarity. And so she wants our depth and our direction, not just that the chores are being done. And so the mistake that most of us are going to make is that we're going to still try to be nice by avoiding any type of dominance or what could be perceived as dominance, by taking the back seat or actually even just seeking approval. And then that's going to neutralize any energy that you're trying to develop. And so instead, you want to reclaim your masculine edge. And you can do that by making a plan for the weekend without asking her. Touch base with her, confidence, not caution. Hold strong eye contact and lead the moment. Show her the weight of your presence. And there's a key point in there, and that's making sure you're holding strong eye contact. You're not drifting away. And so point number 3, or tip number 3 for you, a strategy, is to break the routine with strategic disruption. And so Jack Donovan talks about that masculinity thrives in challenges. And so comfort's going to breed complacency, and passion dies when we have too much routine. A relationship really needs new fire. It also needs adventure. If you were just going to wait for Valentine's Day or an anniversary or a birthday and don't do something intentional, then passion doesn't have an opportunity to live on and outside of specific calendar dates. And so true passion lives in being unpredictable. And so this week, a task for you is to disrupt your routine. Send her a voice note during your workday telling her what you love about her. Lead this with energy back into the relationship. Don't wait for something to happen. Initiate the action. And step 4, or tip number 4 here, is restore your sexual polarity without pressure. And so sexual connection is often the symptom, not the root. And so if she doesn't feel emotionally safe or energetically led, sex becomes a chore, not a craving. And so reigniting passion means building trust with your strength, not with your demands. And so if we're only being physically affectionate when it's tied to initiating sex, then that really conditions her to brace because she knows what's going to happen next and doesn't encourage her to lean in. And so for the next 7 days, initiate non-sexual touch daily. A hand on her lower back, a kiss on the neck, holding her hand in public, anything like this without any agenda. And then just watch what happens when her nervous system starts to trust again. This is going to take a little time to build. And tip number 5, you got to revisit your purpose and then invite her into it. Your mission must be bigger than our marriage. Your wife wants to feel included in the life that you're building. And so when you stop chasing mission, she stops chasing you when she sees you leading with purpose. And so be careful here, because a mistake that we may tend to make is treating her like a coworker or a roommate instead of the woman you're inviting into something meaningful. And so how do you do that? You can share a vision with her about your business, about your faith or your legacy. Ask her opinion. Let her feel your fire. Women respond to a man who's on fire with purpose. And so building reigniting passion really starts with reclaiming our own roles, doesn't it? And it's not just about as a husband or a provider, but it's as being grounded, emotionally attuned, and spiritually aligned man who really feels seen, safe, and desired. And everything we've talked about today isn't just tactics and they're not hacks. It's our habits of being a truly masculine leader who going to choose connection over comfort and leadership over passivity. And so I've got some resources for you today. There's A Way of the Superior Man by David Dieta. It's an excellent book. It's a cornerstone for truly understanding masculine and feminine polarity, spiritual intimacy, and how to really stay deeply connected to purpose while leading your relationship. And it's truly an essential read for any man who's looking to reclaim his edge without losing his emotional depth. No More Mr. Nice Guy by Dr. Robert Glover is excellent. It's going to be a really revealing book for you. I know it was for me, about how unconsciously we're sabotaging intimacy by always seeking approval and avoiding conflict. And he's going to provide you with a framework on how to break free from that passivity and step into true, authentic leadership. The Way of the Superior Man, or The Way of Men, I should say, by Jack Donovan. It's really a primal perspective on masculinity rooted in strength, courage, mastery, and honor. And while it's not relationship focused, it will provide you with a valuable reminder of what it means to carry masculine fire into every domain of your life, including your marriages. Mating in Captivity. And this is by Esther Perel. And I have to tell you, it's one of the most insightful books as it really explores the tension between domesticity and eroticism. And this book is going to really dismantle a lot of myths about sex and long-term relationships and provide actionable shifts to truly reawaken desire for you in your relationship. And the last one I'll offer you is Hold Me Tight by Dr. Sue Johnson. And it's really for men who want to improve emotional connection without losing our masculine strength. And this book's going to offer a blueprint for attachment, bonding, and creating lasting intimacy through emotional safety. At the end of the day, reigniting passion in our marriage isn't about fixing her. It's going to be about reclaiming ourselves. It's about becoming the kind of man who doesn't wait for passion to lead, but he leads with fire. And passion doesn't die in a marriage because of age or time. It fades because we stop showing up with presence, purpose, and a pursuit. So you don't need to become somebody new, gentlemen. We just need to return to the man we were, and before we stopped leading and start leading with our heart and our edge. And our wife's sitting there, she's waiting for us, not for flowers or a date night, but for us to put our energy, our vision, and ourselves on fire. And that's the best part. And when we lead from that place, she just doesn't respond. She's going to come totally alive with you. And so if today's episode has hit home for you, gentlemen, if you're ready to stop coasting and start leading your marriage with depth, strength, and clarity, then I'm going to ask you to take another step with us. Go to members.theawakenedman.net and complete our free integrity challenge. It isn't just a quiz, it's a mirror. It's going to help show you exactly where you are drifted and where you're disconnected and where you can start leading from a place of an alignment. Because passion isn't about intimacy, it's truly about integrity. If you're serious about reigniting not just your own marriage, but your mission as a man, then don't wait. Just go visit the site, take the challenge, lead with fire, live with integrity. And I'll see you on the next episode of the Revolutionary Man podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. Aho.
Thank you for listening to the Revolutionary Man podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is the Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.